This is Surfing Through Cinema. I'm your host, Hawaii Harry. Today I will be discussing the next film for Streaming Through Cinema Week. This is a movie about a young boy who makes an unlikely friend with an alien. No, this is not Mac and Me. This is the film that they are ripping off. I'm of course talking about Steven Spielberg's classic film, E.T. the Extra Terrestrial. Okay, so some technical details about E.T. Like Star Wars, there's a special edition of it that was released for the 20th anniversary of it in 2002. The most notable change made in this was when Elliot and his friends are riding on bikes to get away from the federal officers, and they're about to fly over them using E.T.'s powers. There are two agents that are holding shotguns while standing outside their cars. Steven Spielberg went back in for the 20th anniversary of E.T. and he added in walkie-talkies to kind of bring it down and make it more politically correct, as you will. And in a later interview in 2011, he regretted this decision, stating he's never going to make any digital changes to his movies again. And so, ever since the 20th anniversary, there haven't been any other changes to it. So even with the 30th anniversary and 35th anniversary versions, these are the original theatrical ones. So there hasn't been a Blu-ray release of this special edition. And so what's interesting about that as well is, unlike Star Wars, which completely changed the movies forever, when they released the 20th anniversary, they had both editions on disc with each other in one package. Spielberg wanted the audience to see both the original and the digital. And nowadays, you can only find that, maybe in a thrift store or a dollar store, but you're never going to find it again digitally or on Blu-ray. So let's get into the plot of E.T. A young alien is left behind in a Californian forest. He befriends a young boy named Elliot, who tries to protect E.T., as he's named him, from both his mom and his siblings. But eventually, he has to show him E.T. to his siblings, and then they try to keep E.T. hidden from their mom, who's recently gone through a separation, and they didn't want to cause her any more pain or any more confusion. During all of this, the federal agents have been chasing E.T., and they track him down at Elliot's house, and they break into the house and try to take E.T. away from Elliot. And E.T. and Elliot had developed kind of like a psychic connection, and so E.T. was getting worse and worse and really, really sick. And that was letting Elliot get sick too. So then they decided, okay, we need to figure out how to separate the two from each other, and then they'll take E.T. away. But a recovered Elliot and his older brother, they take E.T. in the back of a van and run away from the federal officers. And then they go into the forest to get away from the agents, and they find that E.T.'s satellite he had created had worked and called back his family. And he and Elliot kind of make a last goodbye, and then E.T. goes home with his family. And forever changing both him and his family, who would now become more united as a result of E.T. being around. So that's the plot for E.T. I'm going to go on a break real quick, but first, here's a message from our sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Here's how. It's totally free. There are tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your computer and even your cell phone. But that's not all. Anchor distributes your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. You could even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Anchor is everything you need to make a complete podcast all in one small place. So go on and download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
Okay, so we're back from our break. Now I'm going to get into some critical reviews and then my personal views about E.T. So Roger Ebert gives E.T. a 4 out of 4 stars and even added it to his great movies list before he passed away. And so that kind of shows you how critics really felt about this movie. Like across the board, a majority of them really enjoy this film. And then another example of this is Rotten Tomatoes, who gives E.T. a 98%, and they claim the reason being because it helps families get more connected and feel close together even during trying times. That's why it is a popular movie, because, lots of families have problems and struggles and can feel more connected because of this movie. There aren't a whole lot of people who say anything bad about it. The only bad things you really will find about it are about the special edition of it. Just like with the Star Wars special edition, people did not like the E.T. one. And so, unlike George Lucas, who kept trying to release it, like I said earlier, Steven Spielberg stopped releasing it to recognize that he kind of made a mistake doing the special edition of it. And so he recommends people watch the original one because that's what everyone else got to see. So, yeah, it's too bad we didn't get his full vision of it. But the one we got, a lot of people enjoy. So, it doesn't really make sense to change it in any way. So now we'll get into my views of E.T. I've only seen it a couple of times my whole life, so I don't have as much of an emotional investment in this as I do with Star Wars and Indiana Jones or Jurassic Park. This one I've only seen maybe 5 or 6 times in my whole life. And so when I watched it for this review, I hadn't seen it too many times, and I didn't really have any expectations for it going in. I think the last time I saw it, I was 10, 12 years old. So I had a little bit of memories for it, but I was blown away. I ended up really liking it, I think I agree with a lot of the critics. I think it's a well done movie and really shouldn't be messed with. I mean, it makes sense why they added it to the National Film Archive, because it really is a wonderful film and very cinematic and magic. And yeah, I think it's a great movie to watch. I will say some of my issues with it. These are kind of more technical, but I think some of the visual effects haven't aged very well. In particular with the spaceship and the forest. The matting and the coloring of it don't really match. And maybe that's just because I watched it on Netflix, so maybe their version of it wasn't the best. I definitely think maybe a remastering to kind of fix the coloring of that would be okay. That I'm okay with. I'm not okay with completely changing dialogue or completely changing, guns into walkie-talkies. I don't think that's a good idea. But definitely maybe fixing the coloring. I'm not sure, but other than that, I thought the animatronics and the puppet were amazing. It's insane how much work and effort was put into that thing to make it more believable and likable. I mean, he kind of has a pug look, he's so ugly that he's kind of cute, so I'm sure it was a very hard task to make an alien like that likable. And unlike the copycat of it, Mac and Me, the alien in that one is hideous and very hard to like because it's just so creepy looking. And the way they walk and all that, it's just very strange. But this movie, E.T., he feels like an alien, but he's likable. He's kind of innocent. He's, trying to learn how to speak English, so it's very cute and very innocent. I like how the young sister, played by Drew Barrymore, is kind of teaching him how to talk and how to learn his ABCs, and I thought that was kind of a cute moment too. And yeah, I also agree with Spielberg, watch the original film. I think that's the best way to watch it. I don't think any special editions of it are good. I don't really see a point in them. There are a few exceptions, I think, in Hollywood where the special edition is preferable. For example, the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2. I think that one is better than the original one. The Lord of the Rings extended editions I find to be better than the theatrical cuts. But I don't like this trend that Hollywood is having right now. I mean, I did mention a few good ones, but it's become a trend now, in particular with the DC movies, to re-release a newer version of their movie to be supposedly better. The huge controversy with the Snyder cut of Justice League and finally getting a version of it. I just don't know if it's going to really be better than the original Justice League. Unless it's completely different, like Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, I have a hard time believing that this Justice League will be any different than the Joss Whedon cut. I'm afraid it's going to be just like the Batman vs. Superman extended edition. It's probably going to have more scenes here and there, but I don't think the crux or the structure of the movies can be very different. You know, I think they're struggling to make ends meet, and I just think they need to stop it altogether before they just completely bankrupt themselves. But maybe that's why they haven't stopped, because, movies like Aquaman, they still made like $1 billion off of, so it's hard to tell what DC's motives are. I hope they find their way, because I don't think the idea of releasing a movie that's kind of half good and then re-releasing it extended, which only makes it maybe 5% better, I don't think that's the way to go. I agree with Spielberg, keep the movies the way they are, and we'll just see what happens. So those are my thoughts and feelings about E.T. Next time, I'll be discussing the next film for Musicals Week. This is a movie that's all about love, war, and music. And this episode will be all about Roger and Hammerstein's classic musical, South Pacific. Until next time, this has been Surfing Through Cinema with Hawaii Harry. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Surfing Through Cinema. Make sure to check us out on Facebook at Surfing Through Cinema with Hawaii Harry and on Instagram with Surfing Through Cinema. We also have a website, www.anchor.fm/Surfing Through Cinema, where you can learn more details on upcoming episodes and on past episodes.